You didn't slam the door. You didn't shout. You didn't beg to be understood. You just walked away quietly, and that silence became the loudest sound he's ever heard, because now he can't find peace. Silence has been misunderstood for a long time. People are taught that if you don't defend yourself loudly, if you don't explain your pain in detail, if you don't fight to be heard, then you must be losing. But silence is not surrender. Silence is often the moment when someone finally decides they've said enough. It's the pause that comes after years of speaking into spaces where their words were ignored, twisted, or minimized. Silence is not empty, it's full of restraint, awareness, and self-control. It is chosen, not forced, and there is power in choosing not to react when reacting would only cost you your dignity. Silence requires discipline. It takes strength to sit with the urge to explain yourself and decide not to. Anyone can raise their voice when emotions run high, but it takes real control to lower it and walk away. Silence means you understand that not every battle deserves your energy. It means you recognize that some people aren't listening to understand, they're listening to respond, to win, or to dominate. When you choose silence in those moments, you are not giving up your truth. You are protecting it. You're saying, I know who I am, and I don't need your validation to confirm it. There is also a maturity in silence that only comes from experience. Loud reactions often come from wounds that are still open. Silence comes from scars that have healed enough to stop bleeding. When you've reached a point where you no longer feel the need to convince someone of your worth, you've stepped into a higher level of self-respect. Silence becomes a boundary. It draws a line without aggression, without cruelty, without drama. It communicates something words never could. Access to me is no longer guaranteed. Silence shifts the balance of power. When someone expects an argument and receives calm distance instead, it unsettles them. When they expect explanations and receive none, it forces them to confront themselves. Silence removes the distractions. There's no argument to hide behind, no shouting to deflect responsibility. All that's left is reflection. That's why silence often echoes louder than words. It gives people space to hear their own behavior, their own mistakes, their own regrets, and many people are deeply uncomfortable with that sound. Choosing silence also means choosing peace over performance. You stop trying to prove how hurt you are. You stop rehearsing your pain for an audience that never truly cared. Silence frees you from the exhausting cycle of repeating yourself to someone who already decided not to change. It allows you to redirect your energy inward toward healing, growth, and clarity. Silence is not passive. It is intentional. It is the decision to stop leaking energy into places that drain you and start investing it where it can actually grow. Most importantly, silence is a form of self-trust. It shows that you trust your own judgment enough to walk away without applause, without closure, without reassurance. You trust that your decision doesn't need to be understood by everyone to be right for you. Silence says, I know what I experienced, and that's enough. It's the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs to be loud to be powerful, someone who understands that sometimes the strongest statement you can make is the one you don't say out loud. Walking away is often mistaken for giving up, but in reality, it is one of the most demanding decisions a person can make. Staying is easy when it's familiar, even when it's painful. Enduring disrespect, confusion, or emotional exhaustion requires far less courage than choosing to leave it behind. Walking away means you finally acknowledged a truth you were trying to outgrow. That loyalty without reciprocity is self-betrayal. It means you stopped mistaking endurance for love and tolerance for virtue. Strength shows itself the moment you decide that your well-being matters more than maintaining access to people who consistently devalue it. Walking away requires clarity. You don't leave impulsively. You leave after observing patterns, after offering chances, after exhausting conversations that went nowhere. You leave after realizing that no amount of effort on your part can compensate for someone else's unwillingness to change. That realization is not soft, it is sobering. It forces you to accept that potential is meaningless without action, and that intentions don't outweigh impact. Strength is not hoping someone will become better for you. Strength is accepting who they are and choosing accordingly. There is also grief in walking away, and carrying grief without turning back takes courage. You don't only walk away from a person, you walk away from the version of the future you imagined with them. You release the hope that things could be different if you just tried harder, explained better, waited longer. That hope can be heavy. Letting it go feels like loss, even when the decision is right. Strength is not the absence of sadness. It's the willingness to move forward despite it. It's choosing long-term peace over short-term comfort. Walking away demands accountability to yourself. You can no longer hide behind excuses or distractions. Once you leave, you face your own healing, your own growth, your own responsibility to rebuild what was worn down. That takes effort. It means confronting the parts of yourself that stayed too long, ignored red flags, or settled for less than you deserved. Strength is not pretending those moments didn't happen. It's learning from them without letting shame define you. Walking away says, I am willing to do the work it takes to become healthier. There is a quiet bravery in choosing uncertainty over familiar pain. When you walk away, there are no guarantees waiting for you, just possibility. You don't know who will come next, how long healing will take, or what the next chapter will demand of you. Yet you step forward anyway. That leap requires faith in yourself, not in outcomes. It's the confidence that even if the road is difficult, it will not cost you your self-respect. Strength lives in that trust, the belief that you can survive discomfort without abandoning yourself. Walking away also reclaims your agency. As long as you stay where you are diminished, someone else controls the terms of your emotional reality. When you leave, you take that power back. You decide what behavior you will accept, what access people have to you, and what standards you live by. Strength is not controlling others, it's governing yourself. Walking away is the moment you stop waiting for permission to be treated well and start enforcing your own boundaries through action, not words. Respect is rarely noticed while it's present. When someone consistently shows up with patience, loyalty, and understanding, it slowly becomes expected rather than appreciated. Familiarity dulls awareness. What once felt valuable becomes assumed, and assumptions breed carelessness. People begin to believe that presence is permanent, that effort will always be available, that forgiveness has no limit. Respect fades not because it was never there, but because it was never protected. And when respect is taken for granted, its absence becomes the first true awakening. When you remove yourself from a space that stopped honoring you, the shift is immediate, even if it isn't acknowledged out loud. The dynamic changes, the ease disappears, the emotional labor you once carried quietly is suddenly missing. Small things begin to feel heavier because the person who made them lighter is no longer there. Respect reveals its value in the vacuum it leaves behind. It is no longer a concept, It becomes a felt experience, one marked by discomfort, regret, and the realization that something essential is gone. The loss of respect forces reflection in a way confrontation often cannot. Arguments allow people to defend themselves, justify behavior, and shift blame. Absence removes that escape. There is no one to argue with, no reaction to provoke, no reassurance to lean on. All that remains is memory and accountability. This is where respect resurfaces not as admiration, but as recognition. Recognition of patience that was underestimated, boundaries that were ignored, and consistency that was mistaken for weakness. People often confuse respect with control. They believe as long as someone stays, they are still in charge of the narrative. But respect is not about dominance, it's about consideration. When someone leaves, that illusion of control collapses. The power dynamic resets. Suddenly, the person who was once predictable is no longer accessible. That unpredictability unsettles those who assumed they could always reach you. Respect begins to form not from fear, but from the understanding that access must be earned, not assumed. There is a hard lesson in realizing respect too late. Once it's gone, apologies feel heavier and intentions feel smaller. The absence of respect turns memories into mirrors. People start replaying moments they dismissed, words they overlooked, chances they wasted. What was once background noise becomes the loudest reminder of their own neglect. Respect, when gone, does not shout, it lingers. It sits quietly in every unanswered message, every empty space where connection used to be. True respect is never demanded, it's discovered through loss. When someone walks away without bitterness, without chaos, without trying to reclaim what was denied, it reframes everything. It shows that respect was always present, it just wasn't reciprocated. And that realization carries weight. Because once respect is felt in its absence, it cannot be unlearned. It reshapes how people remember you, and more importantly, how they remember themselves in your absence. Peace is often misunderstood as weakness, as avoidance, or as indifference. In reality, peace is the reward of hard decisions made with clarity and courage. Choosing peace means you finally recognized that constant tension, emotional confusion, and inner turmoil are not normal conditions of love or connection. It means you stopped romanticizing struggle and started valuing stability. Peace is not something you stumble into. It is something you actively protect, often at the cost of relationships that thrived on chaos rather than mutual care. Choosing peace requires honesty with yourself. You have to admit when something is draining you more than it's nourishing you. That admission can be uncomfortable because it forces you to confront how long you tolerated what never felt right. Peace begins when you stop lying to yourself to keep others comfortable. It grows when you stop justifying behavior that leaves you anxious, exhausted, or guessing your worth. Choosing peace is not about blaming anyone. It's about acknowledging what your nervous system has been trying to tell you all along. Peace also demands boundaries, and boundaries often upset people who benefited from your lack of them. When you choose peace, you stop explaining yourself repeatedly. You stop overextending, overgiving, and overcompromising. That shift can feel selfish to those who relied on your silence or compliance. But peace is not selfish, it is self-preserving. It is the understanding that you cannot heal in the same environment that wounded you, and you cannot grow while constantly defending your right to feel safe. There is a cost to peace, and it is often misunderstood. You may lose people who only knew how to connect through conflict. You may be misunderstood by those who equate distance with rejection. You may be labeled cold, distant, or changed. But peace does not concern itself with opinions formed from limited access. Peace is not loud enough to argue for itself. It simply exists, steady and grounding, reminding you that calm is not something to feel guilty about. Choosing peace also reshapes your standards. Once you experience life without constant emotional noise, you become less willing to tolerate it again. You start noticing the difference between effort and intention, between words and consistency. Peace sharpens discernment. It teaches you that not every connection deserves proximity, and not every apology deserves reconciliation. Peace doesn't make you closed off, it makes you selective. Peace is priceless because it touches every part of your life. It improves how you think, how you rest, how you respond. It gives you space to hear yourself again, to rebuild trust with your instincts, to feel grounded in your decisions. Choosing peace is not an escape, it is a return. A return to yourself, to clarity, to a life that no longer requires you to be at war with your own emotions just to maintain a connection. Growth changes the rules of every relationship you're in. When you begin to evolve, you stop playing the role people assign to you. You no longer respond the same way, tolerate the same behavior, or accept the same limitations. This shift can be deeply unsettling for those who benefited from your old patterns. Growth exposes dynamics that once went unquestioned. It highlights imbalances, unmet expectations, and unspoken dependencies. What feels like progress to you can feel like loss of control to someone else. People are often comfortable with the version of you that required less from them. The version that explained too much, forgave too quickly, and stayed too long. When you grow, you remove that convenience. You stop absorbing discomfort so others can remain comfortable. This forces people to confront their own behavior, and not everyone is ready for that reflection. Growth acts like a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. They show effort where effort was missing and maturity where avoidance once lived. Growth also changes communication. You become more intentional with your words and more selective with your energy. You don't argue to be understood, you observe to decide. That calm detachment can feel threatening to people who are used to emotional reactions. When you stop engaging in familiar patterns, it disrupts the emotional economy of the relationship. The absence of drama doesn't create peace for everyone. For some, it creates insecurity. As you grow, you also outgrow explanations. You no longer feel the need to justify your boundaries or convince others of your needs. This can be misinterpreted as arrogance or coldness, but it's actually clarity. Growth teaches you that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Some people only earned proximity to your past, not your future. Letting go of the need to be understood by everyone is one of the most uncomfortable yet liberating parts of growth. Growth can feel isolating because it separates you from what no longer aligns. You may notice fewer conversations that feel fulfilling and fewer connections that feel mutual. This loneliness is temporary, but it is necessary. Growth creates space for healthier relationships, deeper self-respect, and more aligned connections. The discomfort comes from standing in that space before it fills, trusting that what you're becoming matters more than what you're leaving behind. Ultimately, growth is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. It challenges both you and others to rise or fall away. When you grow, you stop negotiating with your own potential. You move forward even when it disrupts familiar dynamics. And while not everyone will celebrate your evolution, the discomfort it creates is proof that something real is changing, something that can no longer be ignored or controlled. Absence teaches what words never could. When you remove yourself, you take with you your patience, your effort, your emotional presence, all the things that once made the situation function. What remains is the reality of what was taken for granted. Absence is not a tactic or a threat. It is a consequence. It doesn't explain itself or argue its case. It simply reveals what your presence was holding together, quietly and consistently, without recognition. Your absence forces people to sit with the impact of their choices. Without you there to smooth things over, misunderstandings linger and accountability can no longer be avoided. There is no distraction, no emotional cushion, no familiar rhythm to fall back on. Absence removes the safety net. It turns reflection inward where it can no longer be deflected. The lesson isn't delivered through confrontation, it unfolds through realization, often slowly and uncomfortably. Absence also rewrites the narrative. While you were present, your value may have been underestimated because it was accessible. Once you are gone, memory does the work. Moments once dismissed gain new meaning. Effort once overlooked becomes visible in hindsight. Absence sharpens perspective. It reframes the past, not through nostalgia, but through recognition of what was lost due to neglect, complacency, or disregard. There is strength in allowing absence to speak for you. It shows restraint, not resentment. You are not trying to prove a point or extract an apology. You are allowing space to do what force never could. Absence teaches self-sufficiency as well, both for you and for others. You learn that you can survive without being constantly available, and others learn that your presence was not guaranteed. Absence also protects your healing. By staying away, you stop reopening wounds that never had time to close. You give yourself room to regain emotional balance, to rebuild confidence, and to reconnect with your own needs. Absence is not avoidance, it is alignment. It aligns your actions with your boundaries and your self-worth. It reinforces the decision that your peace is not negotiable. Most importantly, absence delivers the lesson without cruelty. It doesn't seek revenge or validation. It allows growth, whether that growth comes through understanding or regret. The lesson remains the same. Your presence had value, and its removal changed everything. Absence leaves no room for denial, only awareness, and awareness is often the beginning of truth. You didn't leave to be missed. You didn't leave to teach a lesson. You didn't leave to be remembered. You left because staying was costing you yourself. And if your silence echoes in his mind, if your absence disrupts his peace, if the quiet reminds him of everything he failed to protect that is not your responsibility, some lessons don't come with explanations. They come with distance, they come with loss, they come with time. You chose clarity over chaos. You chose peace over permission. You chose yourself without announcing it. And that choice speaks louder than anything you could have ever said.